So as I mentioned, the Exo hosted is built around the needs and requirements of MYOB Exo. It's the only cloud environment that is actually specifically designed for that package. And as Grant mentioned, it's accessible anywhere, any device. It means that you can run Exo inside your web browser. We support all major browsers, all current versions of Windows, and including Windows 7 if you've still got it. Android devices, whether it's tablets, phones, Apple iPads, iPhones, iMacs, and Chromebooks as well. Yeah, and that's the benefit of it, is it doesn't matter what device you have, we can access your Exo system in the cloud. As I mentioned, we've got this enormous network of 82 servers, I think it is. We have a large resource pool on tap, which means that we can increase and decrease your resources as required. If you get temp staff in, we can ramp things up, and as they drop off, we can pull things back, and that's the benefit of using servers in the cloud. It doesn't matter what size a site is. Everyone gains the benefit of our network distributes all your processing loads across multiple servers. So what that means is we have a separate file server, we have a separate SQL server, we have separate terminal servers, we have a separate EDI or foreign process machines. So it doesn't matter if you're only 4 users or if you're 40 users, you get the benefit of that distributed processing load, which means that we're not running everything on one server, and all the users will actually find benefit and gain speed and more efficiency out of that distributing processing. The network, of course, like most cloud systems, we've got redundant hardware for the servers, for the SANs, which is a storage area network where all the files actually reside. There's also redundant sonic wall firewalls in there as well. And all of our machines use CrowdStrike Falcon as its AI antivirus, anti-malware protection. CrowdStrike is the best piece of software out there at the moment, and it's used by all the large companies, banks, Bunnings, Mitre 10, all the supermarkets, and a lot of obviously big companies around the world. As part of that process of us managing all those machines, every server has multiple snapshots taken, as Ronnie mentioned earlier. Cybersecurity, backups, it's all very front of mind. So at minimum, all of our servers have a snapshot taken every 4 hours. There are different retention periods for different snapshots, but essentially we've got a 4-hourly snapshot of every machine, and the daily one we keep for 28 days in the environment itself for faster recovery if someone's lost a file. Every week we offload the entire environment off to a data recovery site. There's currently about 48 terabytes that get shipped off over the course of the weekend. And that site as well, we do a monthly tape offload, and we rotate those tapes through 12 months. So we've got a lot of backup copies of all the data should something happen. Exo hosted essentially is a secure bubble in the cloud. The only access in and out is either with TSL, SSL or TLS encryption. And at the top there, we've got 3 primary access points, I guess. The one on the far left is more of our EDI path, where we're actually running a secure FTP server. So we get files dropped in there, and then customer processes will actually pick up those files and import the data or do an output if required. On the right, we've got our web server. Some customers are using things like dealers online or web shops. They might have custom warehouse management programs that are using tablets. We could also be using things like TimeTrack as well as another add-on for Exo. And so we can actually publish those externally just out of convenience for having everything in that same ecosystem. And in the middle, of course, we've got our primary load balancers. The load balancers sit there and accept your login. The logins are protected by 2FA. And then that gets down to our layer of distributed terminal servers. The reason we distribute everyone across terminal servers is inevitably with Windows updates, a server may slow down, it may have an issue, and with the load balancer and that cluster of terminal servers, we can actually then redirect your logins to another terminal server while the original one gets repaired. So downtime is reduced. And then sitting behind the terminal servers, we've got a bank of database SQL servers, we have authentication servers, we've got multiple file servers, and then there are other processing services for, as Sam had mentioned, all those background tasks are actually running on another separate set of machines, which helps distribute that processing load, so the user experience is never actually affected by a large resource-consuming process. Over the last 10 years, and this is not a complete list, like I said, our ecosystem has evolved and grown over that time. And essentially, any add-on that's out there or any third-party integration, Exo Hosted is compatible with. So we've got multiple customers using multiple add-ons and lots of integrations. And as I said, Exo Hosted is the only cloud environment that is actually specifically designed for that entire ecosystem. And as the name doesn't quite suggest, Exo Hosted isn't just for Exo. It's always been evolving over those last 10 years to encapsulate more needs of customer environments, such as we've got customers who have decommissioned entire servers and they're left with all these network drives. So we can actually recreate those network drives that you may or may not have. Whatever custom security group you have around those folders, we can mimic all that and actually transfer everything that you've currently got on an on-premise server up into the cloud. And then the users, the only difference that they see is once they've actually got their desktop, they just open up a web browser, log into the server, click on Windows Explorer like they would normally, and they'll see all their same files. So it's we're extremely customizable for every site. As I mentioned, we also run secure FTP server for those EDI transactions coming in and out. There's obviously background services such as Flow, or there's another one that's just recently been installed, and that's actually doing EDI work as well. But we do have this sort of Dropbox for secure files to be dumped and then processed, or vice versa. We run an SMTP relay for outbound email. We use a service called SMTP2Go. We used to run our own internal one, but over the years with other cybersecurity requirements, we had to increase our protection for that email, and so we use a company called SMTP2Go. But we provision that as part of the service if it's required. Along with our other range of offerings, for sites that are only using, say, Windows Defender on their local devices, we can also provide webroot secure anywhere for local devices, just to ensure that everyone's protected as much as possible. And then to sort of finalize, we can bundle all your Office 365 licenses together with the Exo hosted bill, so you're just getting one invoice to process for all your cloud services. And just to tag on what Ronnie mentioned about those phishing emails, we've partnered with a company called SMX for more advanced email filtering for inbound and outbound email. SMX is a localized product for New Zealand and Australia, and it is able to respond to threats a lot quicker than like a global email filter such as what's in Office 365. It's also got some more advanced filtering rules for anti-whaling measures and anti-phishing. So those emails where the accounts team get something to say, hey, it's it's the CEO here. I need you to, transfer $5,000. SMX will actually, it's smart enough to pick that up and place a warning in the top of the email to notify the user, hey, this looks very suspect. And then finally, we've also got a service from a company called Skykick to provide Office 365, or now Microsoft 365 backup services to cover things like email, Teams, OneDrive, and SharePoint. It's not heavily known, or it's just really more assumed that Office 365 or Microsoft 365 is backed up. Your files aren't actually backed up. There is a restore or a recycle bin there that's valid for 30 days. But if you delete something by mistake after 30 days, the file is potentially gone. Where with Skykick, it takes up to 4 snapshots a day of all your email, all your Teams, OneDrive, and SharePoint. And it obviously gives you that ability to, retrieve and have a proper backup and restore process for those files. As I mentioned, we've got a slightly different offering called the Exo Hosted Vault, which is designed as a long-term and low-cost data storage for Exo or for any other files you may or may not have. It was mainly they're designed for when customers do potentially make that step and move away from Exo onto another platform such as Acumatica. They obviously still need to have, you've still got to meet the record keeping requirements for the IRD and the ATO. And the Vault gives us an easy way of keeping that Exo active, protected by 2FA, and you can, even after you've changed system, you can actually then just log in, let your accountant do their audits, or even just looking up historical transactions, which may or may not be able to be migrated across into a new platform. As I said, we've got 19 Vault sites at the moment. And they're using it for that reason, to make sure that they're keeping up with those record keeping requirements. So one of the big questions we were always asked, and we're always trying to figure out, is if I move my system into the cloud, how does it actually compare with just doing an upgrade of our SQL Server inside the office, or replacing the servers we have. So what we've got here, at estimated totals based over a 3-year lifespan, because if you were to buy another server, you'd be looking at, generally they've all got 3-year warranties. And the pricing is obviously very subjective. All sites are different. These examples are based on properly maintained servers that are backed up, and service agreements for them, and what that potentially could look like over a 3-year period, comparing with the potential of moving files into the cloud. So if we looked at, as I mentioned, these are all just example numbers, or estimates, and all sites are different. But if we looked at someone who had a SQL server and they had 10 users, the servers are somewhere physically between $10,000 $12,000. Then you've got your Windows operating system, you've got the user cows, you've got your SQL Server license, you've got your SQL Server cows, you've got a setup cost as obviously a one-off, and then there's the annual costs over the 3 years, for the antivirus, the backup, your support plans, and that pricing for that server upgrade over the 3 years, somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000, let's say. But of course, during that process, you still need to have an Exo migration project to shift the software or shift the database. They could be anywhere from sort of $5,000 to $8,000. So over the 3 years, you're potentially somewhere around the $50,000 mark. But of course, then if that site had a terminal server and you've got to upgrade that at the same time, you've obviously got the hardware costs, you've got setup costs, operating systems, then the annual costs of running them, plus obviously some potentially some call outs if there was an issue sometime over those 3 years. And you end up at a rough total of, let's say anywhere between 80 and 100,000. Just to upgrade something that's on premise in your office. And then as another example out there, obviously there's Microsoft 365, and the back end of that you would have probably heard about the term Azure. In Azure you can have your own servers, and there is a pricing calculator on the web that you can punch some numbers into, which is what I've used here, and that's what a terminal server and a SQL server come out on a monthly basis, with what Azure calls standard support. Standard support has the notation of not business critical support services. I didn't actually change it. If you change the Azure support from standard to professional, it's actually $1,000 more per server, and that's what they deem as business critical. But I mean, that would have just inflated the amounts to a ridiculous amount. But even though when you use the Azure pricing calculator, they don't actually also mention that to make those servers practical, there's actually some other additional hidden bits that you would need around extra domain services to allow users to log on with their existing Microsoft credentials. There's a networking and a bandwidth cost. And then an IP address cost, if you actually wanted to use the services as remote access. So that total over 3 years comes to, somewhere between $70,000 and $75,000. And that still doesn't actually include, it includes a snapshot for those machines, but it doesn't include things like your proper antivirus. It'll have Windows Defender, but that's a very base level product. So there's potential for that 73 to be increased. And of course, you've still got those one-off setup costs for those machines, because they're only a base Windows, they still have to be configured. And you would still have to then migrate your Exo database off into Azure. That's the pricing comparison with the pricing of moving your Exo into an Azure-based environment. The one other thing I will mention about that price, to be fair, is it is based on a monthly rate for those servers. With Azure, you can change the billing to be per minute. So if you have no use outside of business hours of those servers, there would be a reduction. The reason I've picked a monthly rate is if you've got servers that are in-house, as a fair comparison, they're always running on a monthly basis. And the Exo hosted servers as well are always running constant, so they're accessible anytime and anywhere. So if we looked at a 10-user site moving into Exo hosted, we would be, and everything is all very subject to site-specific requirements and additional add-ons and how your user splits and bits and pieces. But let's say there's 10 users with 16 gigs of RAM. We include a 20 gig storage allowance for your database, your Exo files, which we can obviously ramp up or change depending on what other files or documents you may want to store in the cloud. And we'd be somewhere between $1,400 and $1,500 a month. That also includes 2FAs, two-factor authentication on user logins. It includes those 4 hourly snapshots that we take. Within Exo hosted, we take care of all the maintenance of all the servers, and we include support for any user access related questions or issues. Most of the time, any user changes also are included in the monthly price. The only caveat around there is we have some customers who, when a person leaves and we deactivate their login, we go through a process of backing up all their data and potentially their mailbox, and that could take a couple of hours depending on the user. Those 10 users moving into the Exo hosted managed network over 3 years, it's around about $50,000. So quite cost effective versus Microsoft Azure. and very cost effective against actually the hassle of upgrading and replacing equipment on site. All of our servers go through their own upgrade process as well, but users will never know because of the way that the physical hardware is designed in our environment. The servers, the virtual servers actually shift between physical boxes lightning quick. Users actually never notice any drop off, and one physical server can actually be pulled out of its rack, and a replacement go in, fired up, and then basically we readjust and we can move servers back onto physical machines. At a rough estimate, a 10-user Exo site migrating into Exo hosted would also be about half the cost of an Exo server migration. And the reason we make the migrations a lot more cost effective is because we look at all of our customers over a long-term period to have that relationship, and obviously to reduce that barrier of actually making the move into the cloud. As I mentioned, all pricing that I've shown is purely for example purposes only, and anything site specific would need to be actually evaluated at the time. And what I thought was we could jump into a standard demo of Exo hosted, but for everyone here today, we're currently in the process of deploying a new login procedure or a new login page, to keep the environment fresh and up to date. So I thought we'll actually go through that. So we are going to be logging onto the development machine. So everything's fine, it's all been tested, but I figured why not show you what Exo hosted is going to look like in the very near future. So Exo hosted, all the users when they log onto their PCs or their Chromebooks or even your iPad, you just open up Safari, you go to one URL. Currently it's obviously not the development URL at the top. We just use online.exohosted.com, and you'll receive a web page. The users just simply enter in their password. The username is generally your email address, so it's nice and easy to remember. And like I said, with 2FA, normally a prompt would pop up now asking for a 4-digit code from your either Google Authenticator app or your Microsoft Authenticator app. And then the login would let you, the server would let you in. Once we're in, this is a connection that we call HTML5 or browser-based, where your entire server session is actually now running within your web browser. So if you've got an iPad, everything that you see on the screen at the moment is what you would see on the iPad. So you can be completely mobile, you could be traveling, you can be on the road with salespeople and just hotspot onto your phone. And then it's simply, we take your copy of Exo. You don't have to upgrade when you move into Exo hosted. So we would have, there's no additional training for your staff, everything will be perfect, familiar. And simply you just log into the software. The floating panel on the side, we can completely customize. If you've got staff that use job costing, if they're using analytics, if they're using the CRM module, we can obviously add or remove whatever shortcuts you want. In this situation, we've got Word and Excel and Outlook. If you're on a Microsoft 365 Business Premium E3 or higher, you'd be entitled to, or you're licensed through Microsoft to run Office apps on a terminal server. So we give you those apps we just do the install, the apps are there, and when you run them, you'll just sign in to authenticate against your own account. And then, you just use them as they are. So like I said, we've now got Exo running in a web page. So if you run your iPad, you're tapping away with your fingers. The one thing we do have, which is different to everyone else, when it comes to printing, we have a thing called a universal printer, and that universal printer means that without any additional configuration, we're fully compatible with any printer that's actually been set up on your system. So if I was to just view this invoice, and I tell it to print, we can, depending on the printers that a customer has at their own office, we can populate that list with any compatible devices that you actually have. But otherwise, if I was working from home or if I'm on the road and I really needed a copy of this invoice to give to the customer, I select the universal printer, and that's going to generate a PDF essentially, and then fire up all my local printers. So we'll see that I've now got the printer that's actually sitting down the hallway at home. But I could be in the hotel, in their little business center. I could be wherever I need to be, and whatever printers I have on my laptop or your laptop would actually show in that list, and so I can get the output. So, like I said, if you are working from home and you really want a copy of that GL report that you can sit there and highlight all the lines without any extra configuration, we can facilitate that. The other type of connection we have is one called remote app, and that's for Windows-based PCs, and it's simply just that toggle on the front screen there. And the benefit is, after you've logged in with remote app, you can actually get rid of the web browser completely, and now I'm back to the desktop on my PC. I still have that exact same launchpad. So it doesn't matter if you log in with HTML5 or as a remote app, you get the exact same menu. And like I said, if I bring up Windows Explorer as well, just let that populate out. That will also connect back to my machine and show all the local drives, which makes it easy for copying files in and out. But if I was to log into Exo, once again, it's your same Exo that's running currently in your office. It doesn't matter what version, we can bring anything across. And I've now got an application that's running on my desktop. I can drag that between multiple screens. I've got Word, I've got Excel. So I've got the Windows Explorer there. With at the moment, we've got an M drive and an N drive. The N drive is the payroll drive, as an example, and that's got more security on it, so most users won't get the N as well. But regardless of whatever network drives you have on an existing server, we can actually recreate those and any security groups around them. And then literally, once you're in there, you double click on the file, Word, Excel, and everything is already sitting on the server. And yeah, then I'm in here. I don't even notice that I'm running on a remote machine. And the only difference was, once I logged in, I opened up a web page, and I've logged into a web browser securely. All this is running over SSL, and I'm actually currently sitting in Auckland, and this Exo is running off a server based in Sydney. And I'm just going to choose the data screen that's come up. That same account, and that whole process is still there. I've got the universal printer. Which one's going to show me an invoice? So if I was to view that, I'm still getting my same print preview. I'll choose that universal printer, and the main difference is with remote app, we'll see a little green bar, and that's actually the PDF being transferred back to my machine, and Windows is now being told to print it. So once again, my local printers will now appear, and I can choose whatever printer I need, or whatever printer I want, and get the output of that report, or that GL report, or whatever it is you're trying to get. Like I said, if also we've got Word, Excel, and Outlook, They're all licensed via Microsoft. They're all part of the normal updates, so you don't have to worry about any of those. And yeah, that's Exo hosted.